I always knew my mom was manipulative, but I never thought she'd go as far as stealing my identity and wrecking my life. Turns out, cutting her off wasn't enough. She had to find new ways to control me, even from a distance. Growing up with her was like living in a war zone. One minute, she'd act like the perfect mom, cooking my favorite meal and telling me how much she loved me. The next, she'd be screaming in my face, calling me useless, ungrateful, and just like my pathetic father who left when I was 10. From that point on, I became her personal punching bag emotionally, sometimes even physically. She dictated everything, who I could be friends with, what I wore, even what I ate. If I ever pushed back, she'd find a way to make me regret it. I still remember the time I got home 10 minutes late, and she made me sleep outside in the pouring rain. Another time, I didn't clean the house to her standards, so she locked up all the food for 2 days. I was hungry, exhausted, and completely powerless. I knew I had to get out, but of course she made that impossible. Every job I tried to get, she sabotaged. She'd call my bosses, tell them I was stealing or on drugs, anything to keep me trapped. But I kept pushing. I saved every dollar I could, working odd jobs she didn't know about. And 2 months ago, I finally made my escape. For the first time in my life, I was free. I found a tiny apartment on the other side of the city and cut her off, completely blocked her number, deleted her from social media, and refused to engage. But she wasn't done with me. At first, it was the voicemails, dozens of them, from different numbers. She called me selfish, a disgrace, a terrible daughter for leaving her all alone. When I didn't respond, she turned to our relatives. Suddenly, I had aunts and uncles I hadn't spoken to in years texting me, demanding to know why I abandoned my poor mother. I ignored them. I figured if I stayed no contact long enough, she'd get bored and move on. I was so wrong. It started small. Packages I ordered never arrived, even though tracking said they were delivered. Then my mail started disappearing, important documents, bills, even a job offer I had been waiting for. At first, I thought it was bad luck, or maybe someone in my building stealing mail. Then came the first real red flag. A bill showed up for an electric company I had never used, tied to an address I'd never lived at. The address, her house. My mom had set up utilities in my name. That's when I knew she wasn't just harassing me. She was actively trying to destroy me. And then the text started. Random numbers messaging me things like, "Why were you at the pharmacy at 2 p.m.? Or, "You got home late last night." It was beyond creepy. Someone was tracking my movements. I tried to convince myself it was a coincidence, but my gut told me otherwise. I became paranoid, double-checking every lock, avoiding going out alone, constantly looking over my shoulder. Then one night, things escalated. There was a knock on my door. When I opened it, I found 2 police officers standing there, serious expressions on their faces. My stomach dropped. They told me I was being investigated for shoplifting. Apparently, someone matching my description had been caught stealing from a store nearby, and my name had been given as the culprit. My hands shook as I told them I hadn't even left my apartment that day. I begged them to check my building's security cameras. Thankfully, they did. And after reviewing the footage, they confirmed I hadn't gone anywhere. The officers apologized, but I could tell they still looked suspicious. That's when it hit me. This wasn't some random mistake. Someone was trying to frame me, and there was only one person who hated me enough to go this far: my mother. I sat on my couch that night, shaking. She had already ruined my childhood, and now she was trying to take away the life I had barely started to build. I was done being scared. It was time to fight back. I barely slept that night. My mind wouldn't shut off. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined my mother sitting somewhere, laughing at how easily she was getting to me. She had already taken so much from me, but I wasn't about to let her destroy the little freedom I had finally carved out for myself. The next morning, I knew what I had to do. I had to go to the police. I found the same officers who had questioned me about the shoplifting accusation. This time, I came prepared. I told them everything about the fake bills, the missing mail, the creepy messages, and most importantly, my mother's history of manipulation. I even mentioned how she had previously sabotaged my jobs and controlled every aspect of my life. One of the officers, a guy in his early 40s with tired eyes, took a long breath after I finished. "You're saying you think your mother is actively stalking and impersonating you?" "Yes," I said firmly, "and she's not going to stop until she ruins me." They exchanged looks. It was clear they didn't know whether to believe me or brush me off as just another person with family drama. But then, I showed them something that made them pause the electric bill. The address listed wasn't just random, it was her house. That got their attention. The older officer nodded and said they'd start looking into it. But if she's using your identity, you should also contact the credit bureaus. Freeze your accounts. She might have access to more than you realize. That thought sent a chill through me. After leaving the station, I went straight home and pulled up my credit report. My stomach twisted. She had taken out multiple small loans in my name. They weren't huge amounts, nothing that would immediately raise red flags, but they added up. A few $100s here, 1,000 there, enough to leave me drowning in debt before I even had a chance to build my future. My hands were shaking as I sat there staring at the screen. This wasn't just about harassment anymore. This was fraud. She wasn't just trying to hurt me, she was actively destroying my financial future. I called the credit agencies and locked everything down. Then, I filed a fraud report with my bank. Every step felt like a battle, like I was undoing years of damage she had caused behind my back. I thought that would be the end of it. I thought maybe, just maybe, I was finally taking control of my life. Then my neighbor knocked on my door. "Hey," he said, looking uncomfortable. "Some guy's been asking about you." My heart stopped. "What guy?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "I don't know." He looked professional, like a detective or something. He was asking when you come and go, if you have visitors, where you work. He even asked if you had a boyfriend. My skin went cold. That's when I knew my mother had hired a private investigator to track me down. I slammed the door and locked it, my heart pounding. She wasn't just stalking me, she was planning something. But what? I called my job next, just to be safe. "Hey," I said to my manager, "if anyone calls asking about me, can you? We already got a call." She cut in. I nearly dropped my phone. "What?" "Yeah, someone claiming to be a family member called a few days ago, asking about your work schedule. Said it was urgent, but I figured it was shady, so I didn't say anything." My whole body felt like it was buzzing with adrenaline. Did they say who they were? No, just that they were concerned about you and needed to know if you were safe. I already knew who it was. This was her game. She was trying to force me back into her web, and she didn't care how much damage she had to do to make that happen. I couldn't let it continue. I needed backup. So I made the call I never thought I'd make. I reached out to my aunt, my mother's estranged sister. Growing up, my mom always talked about her like she was the worst person on earth. Selfish, greedy, a backstabber. She'd say things like, "She's just like your father, she doesn't care about family." I had barely spoken to my aunt in years, but right now, I was desperate. She picked up on the second ring. "Hello?" I hesitated, gripping my phone. "Aunt Lisa?" There was a beat of silence, then cautious. "Yes?" "It's me," I said. "I need your help." She didn't hesitate. "Tell me everything." So I did. And what she told me next changed everything. Apparently, my mother had scammed her too. Years ago, when their parents passed away, there was supposed to be an inheritance. Nothing crazy, just a house, some money, a few sentimental things. But my mother had lied to my aunt and told her there was nothing left. She had secretly taken everything and sold it. By the time my aunt found out, it was too late. I knew she was a snake, Lisa said, but I didn't know she'd go this far. My voice shook. "She's ruining my life." "Not anymore," my aunt said firmly. "I'm a lawyer, and I'm going to help you take her down." I almost cried right then and there. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't alone. I never expected to have an ally in this fight, but Aunt Lisa was ready to go to war. After our call, she wasted no time. Within an hour, she sent me a list of steps I needed to take. Immediately contact the credit agencies again, file an official police report about identity theft, and most importantly, start gathering evidence. "She's not just a manipulative parent anymore," Lisa told me. "She's a criminal." Hearing it put that way made it feel even more real. This wasn't just about me standing up to a toxic mother. This was about taking down someone who had spent years destroying lives without consequences. And this time, she wasn't getting away with it. Lisa set up a call with a financial investigator she knew. Within minutes, he confirmed my worst fear. My mother had been using my identity for years. "She took out loans in your name, maxed out credit cards, and even signed up for medical services pretending to be you, he said. You're lucky you caught this now. Lucky? That word felt wrong. I had been living a nightmare, and my own mother had been orchestrating it the whole time. Still, it was a relief to finally have proof. I compiled everything: bank statements, fraudulent bills, even the creepy messages I'd received. The investigator helped me file an official fraud claim. Now, instead of me cleaning up the mess alone, authorities were actually looking into her crimes. But that wasn't all. Lisa also helped me file for a restraining order. She's not just ruining your finances, Lisa said. She's stalking you. You need protection. It hit me then just how deep my mother's obsession with control went. It wasn't enough for her to ruin my credit. She wanted to watch me suffer. She wanted to force me back into her grasp. I wasn't going to let her. A week passed, and I heard nothing from my mother. No texts, no calls, no new surprises. For a second, I let myself believe maybe she had backed off. I was wrong. One evening, my boss called me into her office. I need you to see this, she said, pulling up an email. It was from my mother. In it, she claimed I was mentally unstable, dangerous to customers, and a liability to the business. She urged my boss to fire me before I caused an incident. My hands clenched into fists as I read it. She was trying to take away my job now. She called a week ago, too. My boss admitted. I didn't say anything because I figured it was just a bitter family thing. But this, she's trying to destroy you. One swallowed the lump in my throat. You're not firing me, right? My boss scoffed. Hell no. I know you. I know what kind of person you are. Your mom? She sounds unhinged. She forwarded the email to me. If you need this for legal stuff, take it. And don't worry if she tries anything else. Security knows to keep her out. I left work that night feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Rage. This woman had already stolen from me. She had already stalked me, tried to frame me for crimes, and manipulated my family against me. Now she was trying to take away my ability to support myself. That was the last straw. Lisa moved fast. She filed for an emergency hearing for the restraining order, citing my mother's harassment, identity theft, and now her attempts to ruin my career. I didn't tell my mother about it. I wanted her to walk into court, completely unprepared. And that's exactly what happened. When she entered the courtroom and saw Lisa sitting at the lawyer's table, she froze. The color drained from her face. For the first time, she realized she wasn't in control anymore. Lisa stood up, cool and confident. Hello, Michelle, she said, her voice dripping with ice. I had never seen my mother look so unsure of herself. The hearing was brutal. My mother tried everything, crying, playing the victim, even claiming that she had my permission to use my identity. Lisa shut her down every time. She has been systematically destroying my clients' finances, safety, and reputation, Lisa stated. This is not a misunderstanding. This is malicious. The judge agreed. The restraining order was granted immediately. My mother was ordered to cease all contact with me, and she was officially under investigation for fraud. For the first time in my life, the law was on my side. My mother stormed out of the courtroom, but not before turning to me one last time. You'll regret this, she hissed. I met her gaze, completely unshaken. No, I said, I won't. Word spread fast. My mother had spent years manipulating everyone around her, but now, people saw the truth. Relatives who once defended her started distancing themselves. Her social circle collapsed. She lost everything, but she still wasn't done. 2 weeks later, I got a call from Lisa. She's trying to sue the private investigator you hired, she said, laughing in disbelief. Claims he violated confidentiality by talking to your neighbors. I let out a dry laugh. She's really that desperate, huh? Oh, it gets better, Lisa said. He kept everything: texts, emails, even a signed contract. She's got nothing. That's when I realized my mother wasn't strategizing anymore. She was spiraling. She had spent her entire life controlling people, and now that she had lost that power, she was grasping at straws. And she was only going to sink deeper. A few days later, Lisa called me again. They're filing criminal charges against her, she said. I nearly dropped my phone. Wait, what? The fraud investigation turned up a lot more than we thought, Lisa said. Credit card fraud, identity theft, and at least 3 other victims besides you. I felt a wave of relief so strong I almost cried. After years of pain, after everything she had done to me, she was finally going to face real consequences. She could be looking at serious jail time, Lisa said. We did it. I closed my eyes, breathing in real freedom for the first time. She couldn't hurt me anymore. She had finally lost. For the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of my mother. She had spent years controlling me, tormenting me, and making me believe I was nothing without her. But now, she was the one losing everything. After the court granted my restraining order and the fraud investigation escalated into criminal charges, things started spiraling for her fast. I wasn't the only victim. Lisa called me a few days after the hearing with an update. Turns out your mom has been using other people's identities too. My stomach dropped. Wait, what? She didn't just open credit cards in your name, Lisa explained. She pulled the same scam on 2 former friends and even a distant cousin. The authorities are linking all of it together. Hearing that was like a punch to the gut. I had spent years thinking I was the only one suffering under her manipulation, but she had been running these schemes on everyone. She's looking at serious time, Lisa added. This isn't some slap on the wrist kind of thing. This is federal-level fraud. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. She was finally going to face the consequences of everything she had done. But even with all of that happening, she still wasn't done trying to drag me down with her. A week after the charges were filed, I got a call from an unknown number. I shouldn't have answered, but curiosity got the best of me. Hello? Silence for a moment. Then, a voice I hadn't heard in weeks. You really think you've won, don't you? My blood ran cold. It was her. How did you get this number? I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. You're so ungrateful. I did everything for you. I made sacrifices for you, and this is how you repay me? I should have hung up, but I couldn't. I needed to hear her say it. I needed to hear her admit it. You stole from me, I said, gripping the phone. You ruined my credit. You stalked me. And now you're finally facing the consequences. She scoffed. This is your fault. You forced me to do this. That was it. That was the moment I knew there was no hope for her. No remorse. No guilt. Nothing. I hung up and immediately blocked the number. Then I called Lisa. She contacted you? She asked, immediately alert. Yeah, I said. She said I forced her to do all of this. Lisa sighed. That's actually good news, I frowned. How is that good news? Because it proves intent, Lisa explained. If she tries to argue in court that it was a misunderstanding, this proves she knew exactly what she was doing. My mother had spent years gaslighting me into thinking I was the problem. But now, she had incriminated herself, and the law was finally on my side. A few days later, it happened. I was at work when Lisa texted me. They arrested her. I stared at my phone, barely believing it. My hands trembled as I read the words over and over again. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She was actually in custody. I stepped outside, taking a deep breath. The air felt lighter. For so long, I had lived with the fear that she would always find a way to control me, that no matter what I did, she would always win. But this time, she lost. She had spent her entire life manipulating people, and now she was alone. No one was coming to save her. And for once, I didn't feel guilty about it. Even though she was arrested, the damage she caused wasn't going to disappear overnight. My credit was still a mess. The emotional scars from years of abuse weren't going to heal instantly, and there were still people, some distant family members, some of her old friends who tried to make me feel like the villain. She's still your mother, one relative messaged me. You're really going to let her rot in jail? I didn't even bother responding. Where were these people when she was locking up food to punish me? Where were they when she was taking out loans in my name, ruining my future before I even had a chance? No, I didn't owe her anything. I was done explaining myself to people who had no idea what I had been through. Lisa helped me file the necessary paperwork to clean up my finances. It would take time, but at least I had a chance to rebuild now. But the best part? She couldn't reach me anymore. For the first time in my life, I was truly free. A month later, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. But I knew exactly who it was from. I debated throwing it away. But in the end, curiosity won. I opened it. Inside, there was a single sentence written in my mother's handwriting. You will regret this. I stared at it for a long moment. Then, without a second thought, I tore it up and threw it in the trash. I didn't regret a thing. She had spent her entire life trying to break me, but she failed. And I was finally moving on. Even though she was behind bars, My mother's presence still lingered in my life like a shadow that refused to fade. The legal system moved slow, but the weight of the upcoming trial loomed over me every single day. I should have felt relieved that she was finally facing consequences, but a part of me couldn't shake the anxiety. Would she find a way to weasel out of this like she always did? Would she manipulate the court the same way she manipulated everyone else? Lisa didn't think so. "She's backed into a corner," she assured me. "There's too much evidence. She's going down." I wanted to believe that. I needed to believe that. But after spending my whole life being trapped under her control, it was hard to imagine a world where she didn't win. Lisa worked nonstop to make sure the case was airtight. Between the fraudulent credit cards, the stolen loans, and the fact that she had stalked and harassed me for months, there was more than enough to build a strong case. "She's not just looking at a slap on the wrist," Lisa told me. "If the prosecution pushes for it, she could be facing serious time." That should have made me feel better, but honestly, it just made me exhausted. I had spent years surviving my mother's wrath, and now, even with the law on my side, I still felt like I was holding my breath. Then, 2 weeks before the trial, I got a message from an unknown number. It was just one word: "Please." I didn't need to ask who it was from. I blocked the number immediately. She had spent my entire life tearing me apart. She didn't get to play the victim now. The day of the trial, I walked into that courtroom, feeling like I was stepping into a battlefield. I hadn't seen my mother in person since the restraining order hearing, but when I entered the courtroom, there she was sitting at the defendant's table, looking smaller than I remembered. For years, she had seemed larger than life. She had loomed over me, controlling every piece of my world, but now, she was just pathetic. Her lawyer tried to paint her as a struggling mother who had made poor financial choices out of desperation. Lisa shut that down immediately. "This wasn't a one-time mistake," she said firmly. "This was a pattern of manipulation and fraud that spanned years. The evidence is undeniable." Then came the part I had been dreading, my turn to testify. Standing in front of the court, telling strangers about the years of hell my mother put me through, felt like ripping open old wounds. But I did it. I told them about the control, the sabotage, the stalking. I told them how she made my life a living nightmare and then tried to ruin it completely once I finally escaped. When I finished, my mother wouldn't even look at me. For the first time in my life, she had nothing to say. It took the jury less than 3 hours to reach a decision. Guilty. On multiple counts of fraud, identity theft, and harassment. When the judge read the verdict, I felt like I was floating. Like my body had finally let go of years of weight. I didn't even realize I was still carrying. My mother didn't lash out. She didn't scream or make a scene. She just sat there, completely still, as if she couldn't believe it. Maybe she had spent so long getting away with everything that she truly believed she was untouchable. Not anymore. The judge sentenced her to 3 years in prison. It wasn't as long as I had hoped, but it was enough. Enough to ensure she wouldn't come near me again. Enough to prove that, for once, she couldn't manipulate her way out of consequences. When they led her away, she finally turned to look at me. I expected hatred, rage, some last attempt to break me down, but all I saw was shock, like she still couldn't believe she had lost. After the trial, I kept waiting for the sense of finality to hit me, but life doesn't wrap itself up neatly like a movie. The damage she had done wasn't just going to disappear. I still had to rebuild my credit. I still had family members whispering about how cruel I was for sending my own mother to prison. I still had moments where I'd wake up in the middle of the night, expecting to hear her screaming at me. But day by day, I was reclaiming my life. Lisa helped me change my name, legally and officially. I moved into a new apartment, one that she never knew existed. I finally got a fresh start, and for the first time in my life, I felt free. A few months later, Lisa forwarded me a letter. It was from my mother. I didn't read it. I didn't need to. I had spent my whole life craving some kind of closure from her, an apology, an admission, something to make sense of all the years of pain. But now, I realized I didn't need anything from her. She didn't control me anymore. She never would again. I threw the letter away and walked forward toward my life, one that finally belonged to me. For the first time in my life, I wasn't running. No more looking over my shoulder. No more waking up in a panic, thinking she was outside my door. No more checking every unknown number, dreading that it was her. She was gone, locked away, out of my life, I should have felt relief. And I did. But I also felt something else, something I didn't expect. Emptiness. For so long, my entire life had been shaped around surviving her. Every decision I made, every step I took was based on avoiding her wrath. Without her in the picture, I wasn't sure who I was supposed to be. But maybe that was the best part. Because now, I got to decide. The first thing I did after the trial was something I never thought I'd be able to do. I bought my own car. It wasn't anything fancy, just a used sedan with good mileage, but it was mine. I didn't have to ask for permission. I didn't have to worry about her finding out and using it against me. I could just exist on my own terms. I also got a promotion at work. Turns out, cutting toxicity out of your life does wonders for your productivity. My boss had seen everything I had gone through and was genuinely impressed with how I handled it. She told me, "If you can survive all that, you can handle anything." She was right. For the first time, I felt like I was building something real, a future that wasn't dictated by fear. Healing wasn't easy. Some nights, I still woke up feeling like I was suffocating. Some days, I caught myself flinching at loud voices, expecting an explosion that never came. But I started therapy. I started talking about things I had buried for years. For so long, I had convinced myself that my childhood was just normal, tough love, that every kid had to deal with strict parents, punishments, and fear. But my therapist looked me in the eye and said, that wasn't normal. That was abuse. Hearing it put so plainly felt like a weight lifting off my chest. It wasn't my fault. I wasn't crazy. And most importantly, I wasn't alone. When everything first went down, a lot of my extended family turned against me. They called me cruel, selfish, ungrateful. Some even suggested I should help my mother instead of ruining her life. I blocked every single one of them, and I didn't feel bad about it. But what surprised me was how many people did support me. Lisa, of course. She had been my rock through all of this, but also my boss, my coworkers, even neighbors who barely knew me came forward, offering kind words and encouragement. I wasn't alone like I had always believed. I just had to be willing to let good people in. That was something I was still learning. Months passed. Life started to feel normal again, peaceful even. Then, one day, Lisa called. "She's getting out sooner than expected," she told me. I froze. What? She got an early release. Good behavior. Of course she did. My mother had spent her entire life manipulating people. It made sense that she'd find a way to do it in prison too. For a moment, panic bubbled up inside me. What if she came back? What if she tried to find me? Lisa must have sensed my fear. "She still has a permanent restraining order against you," she reminded me. "If she tries anything, she's going straight back." I exhaled. She was right. I was protected now, and I wasn't the same terrified kid anymore. Lisa hesitated. "She sent you another letter." I rolled my eyes. "Let me guess, more guilt trips?" "I didn't read it," Lisa admitted. "Do you want me to send it to you?" I thought about it. For years, I had craved an apology. Some acknowledgement of the damage she had done. But now, I didn't need it. "I don't care what she has to say," I told Lisa. "Throw it away." And just like that, I let her go. People like to think healing is this dramatic moment like flipping a switch, where suddenly everything is better. But it's not. Healing is slow. Some days, I felt like I had completely moved on. Other days, I felt like I was right back where I started. But the difference now, I knew I was stronger than my past. I knew I had built a life she could never touch again. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of the future, because it was finally mine. 1 year after my mother's arrest, I stood outside my own house, a house I bought with my own money. She had spent my whole life convincing me I'd be nothing without her, that I'd fail, that I'd come crawling back, that I was weak. But I wasn't weak. I had survived her, and that meant I could survive anything. To anyone who has ever felt trapped under someone else's control, you can get out. To anyone who has ever doubted their own strength, you are stronger than you know. And to my mother, wherever she is now, I don't hate you. I don't forgive you. I don't think about you at all, because you are nothing but a chapter I have already closed. And my story? It's only just beginning. Story 2. Our child was given by the wife to her infertile sister, who reared her while lying about our child's stillbirth. However, she had remorse and eventually told me the truth after our honeymoon. At the age of 28, Ashley and I were in the same high school class. Basically the typical high school setup. We were just students who knew one another. We weren't great pals or anything. After that, we were given a large assignment to work on jointly. That was one of those time-consuming projects. Thus, we ended up visiting each other's homes in the afternoons. It was all about the project at first. After school, we would gather together, pull out our books and notes, and get to work. We would eat snacks, take breaks, and do other routine activities. But gradually, we began discussing topics other than the work. We discovered that we shared many similarities, similar to the same tunes, that sort of thing. We were spending a lot of time together, so it was pleasant, cozy, and simple. Meeting each other's families was inevitable. I can still clearly recall my first visit to Ashley's place. I was unaware until then that her parents were no longer together. She divided her time evenly between the two sites where she lived with them. I didn't give it much thought at the time, but it felt a little odd. My family is rather typical. My parents, together with a younger brother, are with me. Things were quite typical while my dad was home, but he was frequently away in the military. We had supper together and discussed our days and other typical family topics. My mother was really upset when Ashley arrived. I'm always delighted to welcome visitors. When my father was around, he was kind and hospitable. For the most part, my brother disregarded us. The younger brothers do the same. Ashley came from a different family. At the start of the narrative, her older sister, Tiffany, was 32 years old. She was maybe 16, only reside with Ruby, her mother. Ashley informed me that Tiffany didn't live with her father since he had mistreated her as a child. Ashley said that she didn't have an ideal relationship with her father. She said that despite their occasional arguments, he never physically harmed her. I generally simply listened to her talk about it since it seemed difficult. I was sorry for her. It looked difficult to navigate. The first time I met Ashley's mother, Ruby, she asked a lot of questions. She was curious in my history, my academic performance, and my relationship with Ashley. Ashley's face had turned extremely crimson, as I recall. I was as courteous as I could be when answering all of her inquiries. Ruby kept asking me what I thought about Ashley, but it appeared like her inquiry was more focused on how well Ashley performed on the assignment. She wanted to know if Ashley was easily distracted or if she chatted a lot. I thought it was strange if Ashley was doing her share. Ruby would follow us around when we first started the project. To be honest, it felt invasive. She would say something. She would voice her opinions on everything, which really unnerved Ashley and me. We were to complete this assignment on our own, without assistance from our parents. I gradually began protecting Ashley from Ruby. Ashley is one of the sharpest women I have ever met, and I made sure to inform her that she was doing a fantastic job. I was at Ashley's dad's house when I first met him. He appeared to be well. He inquired about the idea, although not as vehemently as Ruby. He appeared more sincere in his interest in our activities. It was good that he prepared some refreshments for us. I didn't inquire, and he didn't really discuss the family issue. I didn't want to become involved in it. As I mentioned before, initially, things were very typical. Just two children engaged on a project. However, things became complex when Ashley began to tell me about her sister Tiffany at a pretty early age. Tiffany had always hated her, Ashley informed me. Despite Ashley's own admission that her connection with their father was difficult, Tiffany apparently thought Ashley had a better relationship with him. It resembled a typical sibling rivalry situation, except much worse. According to what Ashley had told me about their father, Tiffany's demeanor was quite similar to his. There was nothing wonderful about that. It seems like Tiffany had a serious case of meanness. Ashley detailed a pattern of Tiffany's actions that were merely mean. It was more than just your average sibling tormenting. It was intentional and meant to harm Ashley. Tiffany, for instance, would frequently ridicule Ashley's hair and attire, daily put-downs that never stop. When that type of behavior comes from your own sister, it can be really draining. I was unable to comprehend that. It was common for my brother and I to argue. It went beyond words, but we never did anything to offend one another. Tiffany would do these genuinely very bizarre practical jokes on Ashley. Tiffany was aware of Ashley's severe fear of the dark. To frighten Ashley, Tiffany would lock her in the bathroom and turn off the lights. It's not a joke. That's only being cruel. Ashley told me this, and even after all these years, it still shakes her up. It infuriated me, learning about it. Who treats their sister that way? Then there were Tiffany's actions against Ashley. Things. Ashley adored the new outfits she received for her birthday. Seemingly envious, Tiffany grabbed scissors and tore them to pieces. Simply destroyed them. Ashley's favorite outfits, not just any clothes. It's more than jealousy. That's just out of spite. I couldn't possibly comprehend that degree of brutality. But the worst one, the one with Ashley's hair, was the one that truly stayed with me. Ashley's hair was gorgeously long and golden. She adored it. One day, Tiffany infused Ashley's shampoo with permanent hair color. Before it was too late, Ashley was unaware of it. She had to chop off all of her hair since it was destroyed. Ashley was crying when she told me this story, as I recall. All of these events clearly depicted Tiffany, and it was evident even at the time that she would be a significant issue in Ashley's life and, consequently, in her psyche. I wanted to shield Ashley because I could see how hurt she was. Things began to shift as Ashley and I spent more and more time together, both working on the project and simply chatting. As time went on, we became aware of how much we enjoyed one another. It wasn't a major, abrupt event. It came to them more gradually. It was natural to be together, and we clicked. But Ashley became really frightened as soon as we admitted our feelings. She feared that Ruby and Tiffany would learn about us. She was terrified of what they would do since she knew they wouldn't approve. Thus, we began to conceal our relationship. It was, to be honest, rather stressful and draining. When Ashley was at her mother's place, she did not text me for fear that Ruby might read the texts. Every night, just in case, she would erase all of our texts, because she was so afraid that someone might see us and notify her mother or sister. We were unable to hold hands in public or engage in any other typical couple activities. We had the impression that we were always being watched. We were constantly plagued by the worry that Tiffany, in particular, might find out. This continued for some time, and I became quite irritated. Ashley's anxiety made sense to me, but it seemed like we were giving Tiffany and Ruby too much power over our lives. At last, I issued an ultimatum to Ashley. I informed her that she had to make a decision during prom season. We either split up or publicly attend prom together as a relationship. I was no longer able to sneak about. When I told Ashley that, she burst into tears. She began to weep and expressed her fear to me. She expressed her fear that our relationship would be destroyed by Tiffany and Ruby, who had a habit of undoing everything positive in her life. She truly feared that they would take this away from her. In spite of her dread, Ashley consented to accompany me to prom nonetheless. The entire matter remained looming. Naturally, Tiffany discovered the truth. She had a total tantrum, and I can't even recall how precisely she did it. Tiffany yelled at Ashley, ordering her to end our relationship. Ashley informed me. She uttered many terrible things, as if Ashley wasn't worthy of me, and I would end our relationship nevertheless. Simply mean-spirited remarks meant to make Ashley feel unworthy and insecure. Despite the fact that Ashley and I remained together, she was profoundly impacted for a long time by Tiffany's remarks. Ashley was always afraid that I would abandon her after that. She had begun to doubt everything, and it was obvious that Tiffany's attack had severely damaged her self-esteem. Reassuring her was a never-ending struggle, and it was upsetting to observe the harm Tiffany had caused with her words alone. Tiffany's disapproval of Ashley's relationship wasn't the only reason. In particular, she disliked me. I was never good with Tiffany, not for a minute at all. She made it apparent that she was upset with me for dating Ashley. Tiffany was always overtly unpleasant while I was at Ashley's house. She would call me names like dumb and loser. I was just insulted at random. It was consistent, yet it was juvenile. Additionally, Tiffany would always interrupt whenever Ashley and I were attempting to spend any time together. She refused to give us any room, lingering about all the time, saying things, and overall being annoying. She was clearly attempting to cause me discomfort and sour relations with Ashley. Due to this, as well as Ruby's ongoing observation, I began to spend nearly all of Ashley's time at my place. We could truly unwind and be ourselves, since my family was kind and normal. Ashley was cherished by my mom. She adored Ashley like a daughter and would frequently make jokes about wanting one. Ashley became a regular fixture in our home and began joining us for supper on a regular basis. Normally ignoring everyone, my brother even began to treat Ashley as if she were his own sister. As siblings do, he would playfully taunt her. When my father returned from his military service, he made a special effort to show Ashley kindness. Ashley had a favorite bakery that made these delicious strawberry tarts, simply because he knew she liked them. My dad would get her one whenever he could. Ashley would occasionally even have an overnight, particularly if it was late at night and we were chatting or working on schoolwork. My folks were totally cool with it. Naturally, Ruby was not pleased with this. A major outburst was caused by Ashley's frequent sleepovers at my house. Ruby blamed me because she was upset that Ashley was spending so much time away from home. She began berating Ashley and insulting her, accusing her of abandoning her family, and claiming that I was a negative influence. After that, Ruby gave Ashley the command to end our relationship. Simply put, demanded it. Ashley had never truly challenged her mother to this degree before. There was a huge brawl when she rejected. In her rage, Ruby searched Ashley's phone and discovered our texts. A total breach of privacy occurred. After that, she broke Ashley's phone, simply destroyed it out of fury, and it didn't end there. Ruby wrecked Ashley's room after entering it, flinging objects and creating a massive mess. To eliminate any feeling of security and privacy, she even threatened to pull Ashley's bedroom door off its hinges. During the fight, Tiffany, of course, made matters worse. She began accusing Ashley of having sex with me, saying that we were having sex and even that she may become pregnant. It was a vile and wholly unfounded charge, meant to embarrass Ashley, and only served to increase Ruby's ire. Ashley's father had to come grab her since the situation had gotten so out of hand. Although he came to Ruby's house to pick Ashley up, he was really spending time with another lady at the time, which was a very different matter. She was moving in with him, at least temporarily, so he assisted her in packing some of her books and clothes. As all of this was going on, Ruby was yelling at Ashley in an offensive and hateful manner. Ashley told me about it later, and even though I wasn't present, it was terrible to hear. Ruby's anger was directed toward Ashley, and it was evident that she was totally losing control. Ashley moved out of her mother's house after that major argument and began living with her father. In comparison to living with Ruby and Tiffany, she did see some improvement there. Her father was doing okay. I was relieved that he let Ashley and I to keep dating. He did, however, give Ashley a curfew, 7 p.m. Although a little rigid, it was preferable than nothing. Furthermore, it was clearly preferable than Ruby attempting to split us up. In stark contrast to Ruby's persistent skepticism and allegations, he had no issue with Ashley staying at my house. In fact, my mom would occasionally send her dad pies with Ashley. Then it was time to choose a college decision. As expected, Ruby attempted to meddle once more. In order for her to continue seeing Ashley on a daily basis, she wanted Ashley to attend a nearby college. Despite Ashley's maturing into an adult, it was obviously another attempt to exert control over her. I discussed this a lot with Ashley. I advised her that we needed to move as far away from Ruby as we could, and that she shouldn't allow her to control her destiny. I sincerely believed that Ashley needed room to be herself, and that Ruby's influence was poisonous. Ashley concurred, and we both submitted applications to the same, somewhat distant institution. Both of us were accepted, and even better, Ashley was eligible for a scholarship, which was incredible. Life in college was much better. Our independence was so much greater. Without having to worry about Ruby's rules and opinions all the time, we could go out, hang out with friends, party a bit, and just be regular college students. In addition to working hard and concentrating on our academics, we were also enjoying ourselves and doing new activities. My parents were always encouraging and would visit us whenever they could. It was nice that Ashley's father kept in frequent contact with her. Furthermore, Ashley began to break out of her shell and make new acquaintances. Although she appeared to be more happier and more at ease, Ruby was unable to ignore her. When Ruby originally mentioned that she would be visiting Ashley during our first year together, Ashley was under a lot of stress. Ashley was always on edge, waiting to see what Ruby might say or do. Naturally, Ruby did not let us down. She began by disparaging Ashley's college decision, claiming it was inadequate. She then made fun of Ashley's attractiveness by criticizing her attire. She remarked that Ashley had changed and was no longer the deferential daughter she had brought up. Ruby then began boasting about Tiffany. According to her, Tiffany recently married a man who was ideal for her. Ashley had never heard of this before. She was completely unaware that Tiffany was engaged. Ruby spoke about how wonderful this man was and how he could give Tiffany whatever she could possibly desire. She even went so far as to claim that he was so much better and more accomplished than me. It had been a long time since Ashley and Tiffany had spoken. The entire trip was a complete flop. Ashley was depressed for days after Ruby went. It was comparable to all of her collegiate accomplishments. Ruby's cynicism overpowered all the joy she had discovered. It served as a sobering reminder that, despite our time away at college, Ashley was still being harmed by Ruby's influence, which still played a significant role in her life. During our third year in college, things took a significant turn. Ashley became pregnant. After a week or so of feeling nauseous in the mornings, she discovered that her menstruation was late. Our pregnancy test came back positive. We were both thrilled at first. Indeed, it was unexpected. However, we were content. Even though it came sooner than we had intended, we were in love and excited about the prospect of having a family together. It felt correct. I was prepared to take on the role of father and provide for Ashley and the child. The doctor reported that everything appeared normal and healthy when we began going for ultrasounds together. A fresh chapter seemed to be beginning, a decent one. I disclosed the pregnancy to my parents. They were astonished at first, but then ecstatic. Even though he served in the military, my dad had a soft spot for people. He assured me that we would be supported and that I shouldn't worry. Already, my mother was making plans for how she might support Ashley and the infant. She offered to help in any way she could. It was just the type of assistance we required. Naturally, Ashley had to inform her parents. I was terrified about this portion. To be honest, I was worried about Ashley's safety, being aware of Ruby and Tiffany's potential. However, I was also aware that the talk was essential. She was unable to conceal the pregnancy indefinitely. Although I was concerned about their response, I urged her to speak with them. Ashley made the decision to phone Ruby to set up a meeting. Once she got to her dad's house, she was determined to travel alone. I was really anxious about this, but I knew she wanted to do it her way. To make sure she was all right, she contacted me frequently till she arrived at her dad's house. I didn't hear from her again for long after that. Ashley ignored my calls and texts for 2 weeks. The radio was dead silent. Worry was driving me insane. It was terrible, and I had no idea what was going on. At last, she gave a call. However, I wasn't prepared for that call. Ashley informed me that she was leaving college. She claimed that, although it was unexpected, her mother was really fine with the pregnancy. Although Ruby had asked that Ashley take a vacation from school in order to be a good mother, she claimed that her frequent movements about campus, attending courses, and the general stress of college life may have an impact on the unborn child. I thought that sounded absurd. Ashley assured me that it wasn't a huge concern and that she could always return to college the following year. She said that she wouldn't have to worry about money because her parents had decided to assist her with her college expenses. She said that she was concerned about others gossiping about her and criticizing her for being pregnant and still attending school at the same time. I was aware that something was amiss. Ashley was reminded of her scholarship by me. Given her scholarship, why would she leave school? Funding her schooling? It was illogical. I became skeptical right away, and I pleaded with Ashley to return to the university so that we could have a serious conversation. To talk about our possibilities, I volunteered to drive back right away and meet her wherever she was. In order to prevent her from having to leave college, I reminded her that my parents were prepared and eager to assist us. I informed her that we could discuss the matter with the instructors and come up with a solution together. I was attempting to demonstrate to her that there were other options besides dropping out by providing tangible alternatives. I was certain that Ruby and Tiffany were responsible for Ashley's brainwashing. However, Ashley turned down every offer I made. She continued telling me that everything was good, that she was secure, and that she would soon return to college. Additionally, it was ambiguous and unpersuasive. All she said was that she had to do this for the kid. I even mentioned Ruby's previous actions. I informed Ashley that, given Ruby's treatment of Ashley throughout high school, I didn't believe it was a good idea for her to be caring for the baby. I told her how much time Ashley had spent at my place to get away from Ruby's incessant control and criticism. A battle resulted from this. Ashley said that I was treating her mother too harshly. Ruby had changed. It was the traditional kind of manipulation. Ashley is standing up for her abuser. She informed me that they would decide who would look after the infant, to put it off after the baby was delivered. Months passed after that call. When we could, Ashley and I spoke over the phone, but it was obviously seldom. I suspected that Tiffany and Ruby were dictating how she spoke. Ashley would enthusiastically share with me how Ruby was massaging her feet and how Tiffany accompanied her to her ultrasound sessions. Whenever I had time off from school, I'd take a car to visit Ashley. Ruby detested these visits. As if I were solely to blame, she would continually accuse me of being responsible for Ashley's pregnancy. Sincerely, I believed I deserved all of Ruby's verbal abuse, so I took it. I felt bad for conceiving Ashley, despite the fact that at first we both want the child. The more I attempted to engage with Ashley and the baby, the more Ruby's remarks affected me. Ruby or Tiffany would always get in the way of my attempts to touch Ashley's tummy or speak to the baby. They would say I shouldn't be so connected and that it was strange. They seemed to be making a conscious effort to keep me from developing a relationship with my own child. I felt very powerless since they were in charge of every part of the pregnancy. The birth plan was the next big problem. Ashley informed me that rather than going to the hospital, her mother and sister had been persuading her to give birth at home with a doula there. My mind was instantly alarmed by this. When I first started looking at home births, I was concerned about possible issues even though I understood that some people take that route. What if there was a problem? The thought of Ashley giving birth at a hospital with staff members, nurses, and all the required medical equipment on hand made me feel a lot more at ease. I made it clear to Ashley that I opposed the notion of giving delivery at home. I expressed my worries, telling her that I was concerned for both her and the baby's safety. It seemed like just another tactic used by Ruby and Tiffany to maintain control over the situation and keep Ashley alone and unaffected by outside forces. Ashley, however, began to resist. She claimed to have met the doula and to have been thinking about giving delivery at home. She claimed that it would be a more comfortable and natural experience, and that the doula appeared kind and informed. She was obviously so affected by Ruby and Tiffany that they were affecting her choice. I felt like I was losing control of a situation that directly affected my child and the lady I loved, which made it frightening and frustrating. All I wanted was for them to be secure, and I wanted to take every precaution to ensure a safe birth. The day Ashley went into labor followed. The time couldn't have been worse. My phone was on quiet as necessary when I was taking my final examinations. I didn't know what was going on. I discovered that Ashley had 8 missed calls when I eventually switched my phone back on. And then there came a brief, horrifying text message. "Come now." My heart fell. I was aware that something was seriously off. Tiffany answered. When I tried to contact Ashley again, that was a negative omen in and of itself. Ashley was all okay, Tiffany informed me, but I had to hurry over immediately. She would just say that I had to get there and nothing else. I didn't even consider it. I simply snatched up my keys and got into my car. I drove straight through, driving the entire 5-hour journey to Ashley's dad's house. I had no idea what I would discover when I arrived, so I was in a total panic. Ruby and her ex-husband, Ashley's father, opened the door when I eventually got there. They had gloomy expressions. They didn't even have to speak. Their eyes showed it to me. There had been a horrible incident. Ashley was in her room as I hurried inside. She was sobbing furiously while curled up on the bed. In an attempt to console her, I rushed to her and held her, but I also had to find out what was happening. "What happened?" I kept asking. "What's the matter?" In between tears, Ashley informed me. "I lost the baby," she said. "Stillbirth. We lost our baby." I felt as though the earth was trembling beneath me when Ashley informed me that the baby was gone. My heart simply broke. It seemed unbelievable to me. I spent hours sobbing while holding Ashley. I believe we sobbed together when I just placed my head on her lap. I asked Ashley again what had transpired, how it had occurred. I found it difficult to understand her explanations of the doula's emotions and the acts and words of her mother and sister. It was all a haze of suffering and bewilderment. I had to quickly go to the restroom to get ill after experiencing an intense wave of nausea. It was simply too much to process. I eventually gave my folks a call. I required them. They stated they were coming to collect me as soon as I informed them what had happened. They also experienced heartbreak. My mother simply embraced me as we sobbed together when they got there. My father? How? Ashley reassured her that they too supported her, in spite of everything. Ashley and I continued to love one another in spite of the loss. The only minor solace in all of this was that, after a while, I returned to college. I had to complete my degree, even if it was really difficult. Ashley also returned to college the next semester. It was really hard, but we were trying to return to some sort of routine. We were handling things rather differently. It was difficult for me to even consider having an intimate relationship with Ashley. Once more, our child's death was simply too traumatic and raw. In contrast, Ashley appeared to return to her former self in a matter of days. I assumed that was her coping mechanism. She began going out with her friends frequently, drinking and having parties. She appeared to be making an effort to forget what had transpired. My parents would frequently check in on me to make sure I was all right because they were concerned about me. Tiffany then revealed that she had given birth around 3 months after Ashley's encounter. I was totally taken aback. I didn't even know Tiffany was expecting. Ashley informed me that she had failed to notify me that Tiffany became pregnant after Ashley, as if it were a small thing she had forgotten. She then had the audacity to claim that stillbirths and unexpected pregnancy announcements from the person who caused the stress are commonplace. 3 years later, after graduating from college, Ashley and I were, well, married. Now that I know everything, it's difficult to even write that. First, I acquired a job after graduating. We were able to rent a room together because I worked hard and saved enough money. Ashley eventually found a fantastic job as well, and we were both making equal contributions. Together, we were creating a life. We seemed to be finally getting over all that had transpired. I asked Ashley to marry me this year. I believed I was acting appropriately. I wanted to live my entire life with her because I loved her. Everybody applauded us after she said yes. Ruby appeared to be content as well. In fact, our connection had become better over time. At least that was how it appeared. It seemed like a new beginning. Things started to seem strange throughout the wedding planning process, even though we had chosen to have a typical church wedding. When we visited with the priest who would marry us, he stressed the value of being truthful and keeping no secrets in a marriage. Before the wedding, he advised us to be honest about everything. It would be a sin otherwise. Ashley continued to be obviously jittery after that day. She appeared tense and anxious all the time. I found it strange that she even inquired if I had anything to confess. Since I really had nothing to conceal, I laughed it off. However, she seemed irritated when I inquired if she had anything to confess. She advised me to have greater faith in her and not to be skeptical. Ashley was abnormally silent and preoccupied over the whole wedding preparation process. She was completely uninterested in the specifics, the centerpieces, the guest list, anything. She just showed no concern. She even informed my mother that because she didn't have a preference, she could choose Ashley's wedding gown. Ashley isn't like that at all. My folks were wonderful. They took charge and assisted me with all of the planning. I began to question whether Ashley was having second thoughts after noticing how disinterested she was. She became really distraught when I questioned her directly about it. Although her response looked forced, she told me that she was certain she would marry me. Making me feel awful for asking her questions was just another effort at manipulating my emotions. I was unable to identify what was happening. The actual wedding day was a haze. Ashley didn't seem right during the reception. While she forced smiles and engaged in small chat with the visitors, she remained silent. However, it was obvious that she wasn't there. She seemed to be only going through the motions. I recall seeing a little girl who was Tiffany's child. She shared Tiffany's and Ashley's vivid blue eyes. All of the anguish and sorrow of losing our kid returned when I saw her. It made me feel quite upset and served as a reminder of what I believed had occurred. After congratulating me, Tiffany hurried her daughter out, stating that she had to get her something to eat so she could socialize with the other guests. She seemed to be trying to avoid having a meaningful conversation with me. Later, the first overheard Ashley and Ruby having a heated argument in low voices. I could see from their body language that the talk was heated, even though they were off to the side. It was another indication that something was seriously up, even if I couldn't understand what they were saying. Everything ultimately came to a head on the honeymoon. Ashley remained depressed and reclusive. At last, I informed her that she needed to share her thoughts and feelings with me. She attempted to alter the topic by sidestepping the issue, but I stopped her. I informed her that she had been acting strangely ever since our encounter with the priest. I told her that I would assume the worst of her if she didn't tell me, so she could tell me whatever it is. She was under pressure from me, sure, but I felt compelled to. I couldn't even imagine what she had done, Ashley remarked with a giggle. I persisted, reassuring her that we could overcome anything, that we worked as a group. It was the final time I tried to turn things around. At last, Ashley came clean. She inhaled deeply before telling me everything while tears were running down her cheeks. She stated that she didn't want our marriage to get off to a bad start. She said that she had been lying, and the deception had been consuming her. She was aware that I might not be able to forgive her for what she was about to say. She assured me that she never lost our child. She handed our child over to Tiffany. She clarified that Tiffany was infertile, despite her and her husband's attempts to conceive. Tiffany was thrilled to learn that Ashley was expecting, and she began urging Ashley to give birth to the child right away. Ruby, who had been so against the pregnancy at first, abruptly changed her mind and agreed with Tiffany's proposal. When Ashley refused, they put constant pressure on her, claiming that it was in everyone's best interests. The situation worsened. Tiffany could provide a better life for the child, according to her mother and sister, who scolded her and branded her selfish and dumb. Tiffany maintained that since the kid would be a member of the family, regardless of who raised the child, it made no difference. They disregarded Ashley's rights as a mother entirely. Ashley continued to refuse. She even thought of fleeing, but they confiscated her phone, cutting her off from me and any other outside help. For some reason, Ashley's father even became involved, threatening to expel her from the house when she was pregnant. Her mother said that they would love Ashley more if they gave the kid to Tiffany, and that it wasn't a huge thing. It was a never-ending assault of pressure and emotional manipulation. I had a sharp surge of disgust. I was unable to even gaze at her. I simply left her weeping in the room and left. I was unable to be close to her. I was having trouble breathing. I haven't even known what to do for a few days. Reddit. Since I don't want to see my wife, I am now spending our honeymoon at a separate hotel. Any guidance or assistance would be greatly appreciated, as I am now in a very broken state. One update. Whoa, the reactions to my first post have blown me away. I had no idea that so many people would read it, much less leave comments and show support. Strangers have contacted me to inquire about the veracity of this, expressing their condolences. There's a lot to take in. I've realized how much of a fool I've been after reading all of your comments and observing your responses. I was played. I'm to fault. The thought of how I could have been so blind has made me cry for hours. For years, my 4-year-old daughter has been living a lie. And all this time, I've been living a lie. I resided in a separate hotel after leaving the suite on our honeymoon, where I wrote down everything that had ruined my life. But in the end, I had to return. I packed everything I owned. I was heading home. Ashley pleaded with me to stay. In fact, she dropped down on her knees and begged me to remain. However, it was useless. All of my affection and devotion for Ashley simply vanished, totally depleted. All I could feel was betrayal and loathing. I'm now living at my parents' house after taking a plane back home. They are as startled and appalled as I am, and they have been amazing. What Ashley and her family achieved is unbelievable to them. My folks are upset. To be honest, I don't blame them for being prepared to take up weapons against Ashley's parents. I'm aware that I must act. I'm going to get in touch with a lawyer that focuses in family law. In order to make the greatest decision for my kid, I need to clear my thoughts and determine my alternatives. I must be aware of my rights and know what to do next. It's no longer just about me. It has to do with my kid. I'll provide another update as soon as I know more. Once again, I appreciate all of your help. It has a lot of meaning. Update 2. My previous update was almost 2 months ago. The situation has been quite busy. I've been attending court virtually daily to handle all the legal matters. It has been emotionally and physically taxing. First things first. Ashley and I are no longer wed. The marriage was dissolved thanks to the efforts of my attorney. I believe it would be a huge understatement to say that the grounds were irreconcilable disagreements. I told the judge everything, including how I had thought our kid had dead for years, and how my wife had handed our child away to her infertile sister without my knowledge or agreement. When I informed the judge, she looked twice. To be sure she had heard me right, she even asked me to repeat myself. And almost everyone I've recounted the tale to has responded in that way. People can't believe it's genuine, so they're frightened, appalled, and keep asking me to repeat portions of it. Ashley kept acting like the distraught ex-wife throughout this whole ordeal. It enraged me. Ashley could have battled for our child long ago if she had truly wanted to, as many people have told me. However, she didn't. She didn't say anything, and she let me to suffer because I thought our child was dead. It has come to light that she placed a more priority on her relationships with her mother and sister than she did on our marriage or my paternal rights. A paternity test was the first order the judge issued. Tiffany's attorney vigorously opposed it and used every legal tactic at his disposal to stop it. But in the end, they had to concede. Naturally, the exam verified what I already knew. The child's biological father is me. I became quite angry as the court read the results. I wished I could touch Tiffany. I was enraged. As though they were the victims, Tiffany and Ruby just sat there in silence, sobbing. It was unthinkable. Ashley also took a seat there. She seemed heartbroken. A thorough examination into the circumstances behind my child's surrender has been mandated by the judge. Ashley's actions weren't simply emotionally distressing, according to my lawyer. They were also dubious from a legal standpoint. There is a genuine chance that she may be charged with a crime and go to jail. To be honest, I'm hoping she does. I don't want this horror to happen to any other father or guy. No parent has the right to treat a human being like a commodity by simply giving away their child. I hope that my situation may serve as a warning to others about the dangers of doing this. The third update is complete. My last update was 6 months ago. Due to the continuing custody court issues, I was unable to write anything until today. I had to hold off until everything was settled. In the weeks after the original inquiry and the paternity test, the court case went on. There were testimonies. The complete truth of what transpired was revealed through the presentation of documents. It was established that Ashley had been forced to give up her child by her family, particularly Tiffany and Ruby. Tiffany's attorney attempted to make the case that they sincerely thought Ashley wasn't prepared to have a kid, and that it was better for the child if Tiffany had the baby. They made an effort to depict a well-meaning family, only attempting to act in their best interests. Additionally, they contended that Amber, the kid, should remain with Tiffany, whom she considered to be her mother, rather than being moved. However, their arguments failed to persuade the judge. Respecting the rights of both parents, not only the mother or the individuals she chose to give the kid to, was stressed by the judge. The judge gave me full custody based on all the facts and Amber's best interests. Additionally, Tiffany and Ashley became the targets of legal action. The court determined that allegations of coercion, manipulation, and possible breaches of family and child welfare laws were warranted. Ashley and Tiffany have both been taken into custody. Coercion, acts that cause emotional distress, and possible parental rights breaches are among the allegations. Additionally, the court ordered Ruby and Ashley's father to attend required therapy. They were deemed responsible for supporting their daughter's behavior and participating in the entire plot. It turned out that Tiffany was the one who had really conceived of the concept and advanced it. She was what made the whole thing happen. It found out that the depth of the manipulation and compulsion was mostly unknown to Tiffany's husband. Since we never communicated, he honestly believed that Ashley had never wanted her daughter. Therefore, he wasn't sure whether I was cool with it. Due of his minimal participation, his legal repercussions are not as bad. Community service and a hefty fine. Tiffany, Ruby, Ashley, and even Tiffany's husband were cautioned by the judge to avoid me and Amber. The judge made it quite evident that any such meddling would have far more dire legal repercussions. I was crying with happiness when the court said that I would be given full custody of Amber. It seemed unbelievable to me. I had finally prevailed after all this time. Since the court decision, I have regained custody of my daughter. Amber has been residing with my parents and myself. She was dropped off by a social worker. The social worker would continue to visit for several months to ensure Amber was adjusting well and that everything was proceeding as planned, we were told. I spent hours crying and giving Amber hugs when she first came. She seemed perplexed. She didn't know me, of course. Not at all. We had decorated Amber's new room, which my parents showed her. That brief moment of happiness was everything, as she sprang up and down with excitement on her new bed. I simply couldn't believe she was here for the first few days, that I had her with me at last, and that she was still alive. I want to give her a hug and hold on to her forever whenever I see her. The initial weeks were challenging. Amber missed her mother, Tiffany, as well as her husband, Daddy. That made sense. She had only ever known one mother, Tiffany. We have been attending therapy sessions to assist Amber and me in navigating this change. With gentleness, I showed Amber photos of Ashley and me during Ashley's pregnancy. I explained to her that I was her father and that she had been stolen from me in the simplest terms possible. She took a while to process the information. For a 4-year-old, that's a lot to comprehend. She will warm up soon. The therapist has promised us. All we need to do is be patient, loving, and give her time. The visits from the social worker have gone well. They confirm that Amber is progressing and adjusting well. During all of this, my parents have been amazing sources of support. Without them, I couldn't have succeeded. Additionally, I'm appreciative of the Reddit community's support, including the counsel and encouragement I received from everyone who read my initial post. Now is the time for Amber and I to go on with our lives. I will not be providing any more updates on this matter. I appreciate everyone who asked how I was doing and gave me advice. For me, it meant the world.